This podcast is part of the Listen Frederick Podcast Network. To learn more, visit listenfrederick.com.
The Fedora Files.
Hello and welcome to the Fedora Files. I am Gregory Fedora and I'm so glad you're here. Now, growing up, I was fascinated with the story of Atlantis. It's always been like one of those things where it's, where is it? Was it real? What happened? And it just blew my mind that that was a possibility that this place existed. Obviously, you know, in comic books it went on that like you had Arthur Curry or Kent or Arthur something. He was Aquaman. He was the leader of Atlantis, and then in Marvels it was Namor, and then, you know, there's always been stories of Atlantis and how under the sea they still existed, and that kind of story went on. Even Little Mermaid kind of like did that. But what about Atlantis? What was it? Like, I don't believe that there were mermaids involved in this, but I find it fascinating. And recently I came across some new information that kind of blew my mind, and I wanted to share it with you. But first, let's go over some facts. Facts as in, what was the original story? What do we know? And some of the original facts, that the story of Atlantis first appeared in two dialogues, the Timaeus and the Critias, and both were written by the Greek philosopher Plato in about 360 BC. In his works, Plato described Atlantis as an idyllic civilization located beyond the Pillars of Hercules, which is known as the Straits of Gibraltar. Now, a lot of people said west of, but it's beyond. And that's important because beyond means you could just, once you get through, you could go to the north or you could go to the south. Or you could go straight west into the unknown. But the other thing is, it was a large, he described it as kind of being an island, or at least the capital was kind of an island. And the country of Atlantis was large, like similar to Asia. It was said to be home of a superior race of individuals who embodied the epitome of virtue and wisdom. He said that they were like demigods, half human. He depicted Atlantis as a powerful kingdom, rich in precious metals and rare stones. It had a intricately designed city layout. The capital was concentric circles or rings, and there was a canal coming through, and it was just supposedly beautiful, and so that ships could come in, and they're a big deal in trade. Despite its glory, Atlantis suffered a catastrophic downfall. And it is said that in a single day, Atlantis was wiped off the face of the earth by the ocean. Now, over the years, there have been a lot of locations have been proposed to be Atlantis. You have Crete, which my argument right away, it's not beyond the Straits of Gibraltar. It's within the Mediterranean. Some say it's somewhere in the Bermuda Triangle. There are those stones underneath, but a lot of the geologists are now claiming that's all naturally made. I don't know. There's sunken cities out of Japan. People say maybe that is where we get it. We even have heard that Antarctica, that is Atlantis, and after it got destroyed, the ice consumed it. Also, off of New Zealand, that we now know that there was a landmass that has sunk. So there's a lot of places, even in Spain, there's an area, and there's some markings. There's a guy who has found some credible archaeological things that kind of point to some things, such as there's bowls, drawings, which was a big deal for the Atlanteans, which is also the argument that the people have for Crete, is this bowl culture. Bowls, as in the, not a bowl like you hold, but a bowl like with horns. They worship these bowls. It's also where you get the story of the Minotaur and stuff like that. But I've heard all those. I've looked at them all, and they're all interesting. That the Spain one is the one that really piqued my interest for a while, because I was like, that a lot of what this archaeologist was saying made a lot of sense to me. And I was like, man, that could be it. But I haven't heard any new stuff from that area. And I'd assume if they're still excavating the area, we would get more about it, but we haven't. But most recently, I came across a man named Jimmy Corsetti or Corsetti. And he has a YouTube channel called Bright Insight. And if you get a chance, go there, subscribe to it, check out his stuff if you haven't already. I mean, his stuff is really cool. He goes over a lot of things, does a lot of research, really like digs into some things, and a lot of cool things. The Sphinx, the pyramids, but he did this one on Atlantis and the possible location. And it was one I'd never heard of. And it blew my mind. And I watched his video a couple times. He's also been on Joe Rogan. I watched the episode where he's on Joe Rogan and listened to that podcast. Took a couple hours of my life away. I then started, Google Earthing this location he's talking about. I also did more research to see what else is being said about it. And I'm now going to share the location. It is called the Eye of the Sahara. It's also known as the Richat Structure in Mauritania. Now, that is an area in Africa to the west coast of Africa, like you go through Morocco and Tunisia and all these places to get to this. And at first you're thinking, okay, that's land-based. That's weird. Well, if you do like some research on it, you find out that at one point there was a huge lake river system coming from the west going into the Sahara. The Sahara wasn't always a desert. It was actually a grassy area, even up into like about less than 2,000, like about 2,000 years ago. It was a lush area, the Sahara as well as Egypt. It was all very grassy and plentiful, and it wasn't desert-like. So what happened? Don't know. I'm going to be doing another video that might explain what happened to the area. But this is fascinating to me. Now, there was a river structure from the coast that went into this area that led to this area that is known as the Eye of the Sahara. Now, and it does actually, if you do the Google Earth thing from great heights, it looks like an eyeball. And we'll get to that. Now, in order to get to this location, for like traders and stuff, you would go through the Straits of Gibraltar and swing a left or head south and then get there. The actual place that is the Richat Structure that is known as, it is concentric circles, just as Plato described as the capital city. And it appears to have a canal leading through these circles to the main central island. That would be an island. Geologists and other scientists say that at one point that actually there was a river, and these circular things were within water and they were above the water line, and they can tell by looking at it that, yeah, there's water markings that show that these were like islands, concentric islands. So that in itself was like, whoa, that's interesting. Now it gets even more interesting. Mauritania was once a very wealthy region with gold and other precious metals that are all part of the Atlantis mythos. So like it was very wealthy before the Spanish headed to South America to get gold. They were stealing the gold from Mauritania. So Spaniards were always taking the gold. Wherever the gold was, they wanted it. And that's what Mauritania was first, and then they headed over to the New World and took their gold. That's just how it works, And here's another fascinating thing that I found. There is an ancient Roman map, and it's legit, that marks the territory of Atlantis, or it's called Atlantia. But Atlantis, very similar, and it's in the region where the Eye of the Sahara is. That's what it's called. Now, to the north of this area, it is this mountain range. And this mountain range is called Atlas Mountains. Now, what's interesting is a lot of people okay, Atlas, oh yeah, then they're talking about the guy that held up the mountain or held up the earth on his shoulders, that Atlas. No, there's another Atlas. There's another man, and it's not the mythological dude that had to hold the earth on his shoulders. No, Atlas is also the name of the first or the king of Atlantis. So Atlas was king of Atlantis. The other interesting thing is, according to the Mauritania folklore, Atlas is their first king. So the first king of Mauritania was Atlas. The first king and only king of Atlantis that we know of was Atlas. Could it be the same guy? Could it be the city was destroyed? He just moved and was part of Mauritania. Some, like according to Atlantean mythology, the people moved to Egypt, and they were the people who ended up building the pyramids. And there's a lot going on. And in a way, it makes sense because that would not be a far walk to get over to Egypt. And that's, going from here. And that Egypt is also part of the mythology because that's where Plato said that he had met the person who told him the story. And he then proceeded to tell the cautionary tale. Now, you're thinking though, but this is like within the Sahara Desert, it's a river system, and it's like, how was it destroyed by the ocean in a single day? Now here it gets really crazy and kind of cool. There's evidence, geological evidence, that a giant tsunami came from the Atlantic Ocean, whooshed in through that river system, up that river into the Sahara, and devastated hundreds and thousands of miles. Like, it was a ginormous tsunami that hit this area, went in and drug all this stuff out. And they can tell by looking at these concentric circles that part of it is gone, that something wiped it out. And that could have been the city. And there's evidence they did like the LiDAR over the ocean, and there's a area of the ocean where it's a debris field. It's just dirt and mud that they know was drugged from the Sahara to this area, and it's there. And Mr. Corsetti wants to do more research. He feels we need to be doing more LiDAR on that mud area, doing digs, underwater archaeology, seeing what is under. And that would be interesting because they recently found there was a town off of the coast of Egypt that everyone thought was mythological. And they now, just some divers found pillars and stones and writings. And it was a big stone thing that said the name of the town that everyone thought was not real. It was and it's all, and they found this, and he's like saying, dude, we need to dig in this mud area and see what we can find, because he feels like, it's and it's very, you can see, because as it goes like this out over the ocean, it also tapers to the north and south. You can see that, okay, it's not that way all the way down the coast. It's like this was drug out from the Sahara. And so I find it sad. If you get a chance, go on Google Earth, type in Eye of Sahara, or even the Richat, I'm really bad with names, structure, and that's Richat structure in Mauritania. And look at it. It's really interesting. You can actually see the concentric circles. The other thing is Atlantis was also said to have these particularly colored stones that it was known for and associated. And Mauritania is also known for having these particular colored stones. Is it Atlantis? I don't know. Is it fascinating? Could it possibly be? Yes. I know there's a lot of people who are very, no, there's no such thing as just a mythology. But as we're finding, there's a lot of mythological places we're finding and realizing, wait a minute, these were real. Like I just said, that town off of the coast of Egypt that they just found evidence that, oh wait, this was a legit place. We don't know what happened to it fully, but it's here. It's right off in the Mediterranean. We found it, and I feel it's only a matter of time that we'll eventually find Atlantis, or what is based on. Of course, like all folklore, I think it's based in some kind of reality. I feel like Atlantis was based on a truth, and where it went, what happened to it, where it is now, I don't know. Obviously, there's more stories that as it goes on, they say Atlanta was like really great technology and all. We don't know that. We don't know anything like that. If you go by just Plato's story, they were very wise and a good people, but then it just was destroyed, and no one knew why or how. And now we have this evidence of a major disaster that happened thousands of years ago and took out this area. So, what are your thoughts? What are your thoughts on Atlantis? Where do you think it might be? Where do you hope it is? Do you think it's real? Do you think it's all just a myth, or that a story that Plato came up with to prove a point? Or is it something more? As I said, I'm going to get into another little story about why the Sahara is the way it is, especially Africa, that northeastern part of Africa, really like Ethiopia, and that why it seems to be, it used to once be plentiful and now it's diminished. And this again goes into some mythology and some story and on a biblical level. And I'm going to get into that in a future episode. And I don't want to tell you more about that until next time. But as always, stay safe and keep searching.
The Fedora Files.
Check out FedoraCRT.com today.